Well, you may have heard that the 2020 Democratic presidential hopefuls, first of all, there's a lot of them, but secondly, they've got some lofty goals when it comes to things like free college and health care. But how do they plan to cover it? Senator Bernie Sanders plans to expand the estate tax. Senator Elizabeth Warren has talked about an annual wealth tax. And others say they're going to repeal President Trump's tax cuts. But taxing the rich can't pay for all of these social programs. So who else is at risk of facing new taxes under the progressives? Here to break it down, Chuck DeVore. He is a former California Assemblyman, Vice President of the Texas Public Policy Foundation. In fact, you left the Golden State in large part because of taxes. You wanted to go to Texas. Good to have you here.
It's great to be here.
So let's start big picture, and then we'll get into details. When you look at this field that's ever expanding, they want to raise a whole bunch of taxes.
They do. They do. So far, we're looking at 9 discrete proposals totaling a little more than $10 trillion. That's a lot of money.
That money's going to come from somewhere. So let's break it down. There's one possible Democratic plan, taxing on the rich. The idea would be you tax carried interest and you charge fees to big banks. Does that work?
Well, of course it works. It works as a political device, right? Because while it doesn't raise very much money, it forces the other side to try to defend interests that aren't, frankly, very popular with the American public.
Stand up for the big banks.
Exactly.
But my question is really, does it work in the sense that you say, I'm going after the big banks, but then a lot of those banks pass it on to the little guy, the consumers pay it?
Of course they do. You know, corporations don't pay taxes. We pay taxes because they pass the cost of operations on to us as consumers. There's no free lunch.
Right. Well, you got to tell them there's no free lunch. We'll see. A second plan, options that impact small businesses. We were just talking about the little guy, the middle class that everyone says in both parties they want to help. They're talking about raising Social Security payroll tax cap, increasing the capital gains rate, eliminating the mortgage interest deduction, and repeal pass-through business deduction. That means a lot to small businesses.
It means a lot to small businesses, and here's something that people need to understand. Small business is the engine of job growth in America, and one of the reasons why we're seeing now record unemployment, 50-year lows for all Americans, and especially for African Americans and Hispanics and women. The reason why is because President Donald Trump not only cut taxes, he cut regulations. And if we go backwards, that's all going to slow down.
Something that could impact all Americans. You could talk about taxing the rich, but look at some of these. Increasing the gas tax. We all got to go to the pump one way or another. Introducing a carbon tax. And also, this has been raised before. We'll see if anyone gets behind it. The value-added tax that you see in Europe and ends up hurting their economies.
Right. So these are the big ones. These are the taxes that really hit everybody. And as a result, what you're seeing is that paired with them, you're seeing proposals for massive wealth transfer because these candidates understand that if you, for example, raise energy costs on all Americans, who's going to hit the hardest? It's going to hit the working poor the hardest. So you have to insulate them from that by then taking a huge portion of those new revenues raised and giving it to favored groups.
So you're saying you tell the working poor, I'm going to give you free health care, I'm going to give you free college, your kids are going to be covered, but oh, by the way, we're going to raise your energy costs and all the rest.
Right. It's going to be too expensive for you to drive to work.
Well, that's important. Chuck, appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
What happens when a pro-life group shows up to a liberal college campus?